us the pictures from Black Earth for
About that. So we'll keep working through the process.
4 people on the board.
Oh, yeah.
Shouldn't be more. Yeah, it probably used to be.
I knew that.
Yeah, yeah. I went to that to get even closer.
Yeah, they'd be here to get sworn in.
The lady I went to, well, I went to Bigler's too, but the lady I went to, no, I didn't take the wine. Hers is 28 cents.
So, is there
Only 6 inches for a riser.
13 feet.
That's still 14 feet. You know,
seen them, didn't you?
no way water's going to get that.
No. If it is, there's a hell of a lot more that are on the west end that are going to be flooded.
Berlin also.
These will all be flooded out.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, that's the west end.
I know.
That's what they're trying to show.
And that end got taken out of the floodplain.
Yeah. But there's a fella in FEMA that you can call. Supposedly, people on Long Lake have already been taken out of the floodplain.
Huh?
I forgot to call
Yeah.
them. Getting out
18 hours I had it working.
from FEMA, you can call.
18 hours in when we left the racetrack.
Oh, really call the numbers.
What time did you get out of there then?
That morning, went to work at 6.
No, this is one of the ladies that we
4 hour
visited.
drive?
And then it's 3.5 hours home.
She lives on Long Lake.
Oh, that name was on here.
I couldn't make it.
They didn't put it on here. That's the one I think.
I was burned right out.
That's too much.
And it takes me at least 2 days to recover. As you get older, you don't recover as
Well,
fast.
yeah, cutting wood. I used to cut a pickup load in the morning, one in the afternoon. Now if I get one cut and split all day, I'm doing good.
Then they got two guards for it. And they'll have to go through with Connors. There's another door. The guy used to go out there with a case of beer.
That'd kill you now. That'd kill you now.
Some of these people. I mean,
I guess.
Huh?
I agree.
I can make
You're young though, Pat.
Yeah.
You're an athlete in training yet.
Yeah.
Work the next day.
Well, we'd go out when I was younger, Friday night, Saturday night, and a lot of times Sunday night. Think nothing of it. Let's go.
Commissioner, then I'll leave you alone.
Mr. Kirschner?
He's not here. There you go.
Give this down to Slim on the end there.
Slim? All right, Weddy, that's not funny.
Wednesday afternoon? I have to work for,
Pony should have started.
that won't work for Donna. So what about the next week?
Hunting deck?
Thank you.
Gotta be on
What about like
public works and zoning.
next week?
2, 3, 3.5.
stuff together. Now I got everything all sprayed, you know, and all that.
That might be the ones I gave Mark.
Just rain out at work for my food plots. I planted quarters of an acre and 4 little plots.
He's Russell.
Why don't I email it?
Okay.
Saturday. And on the first day,
7:01. Yes, you can, you're safe. Okay, let's call this meeting to order. We'll entertain a motion to confirm my appointment of Russell Heisey to District 2 as District 2 Supervisor. He will replace Robert W. Jones, who passed away.
Madam Chair, I move to accept it.
Second it?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, now we will have the swearing in of Mr. Heisey.
Thank you, Chairman.
If you'd like to just go to the podium or just somewhere in the other room, we'll just swear in real quick.
I, Russell Heisey,
Having been appointed to the office
having been appointed to the office
of District 2 County Board Supervisor,
of District 2 County Board Supervisor,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right, Melanie will take roll call.
Mrs. Krentz. Here. Mr. Heisey.
Here.
Mr. Tim.
Here.
Mr. Piaski.
Here.
Mr. Eckstein.
Here.
Mr. Weddy.
Here.
Mrs. Collada.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Wadel.
Here.
Mr. Crawford.
Here.
Mark Kirschner.
Here.
All right, we will stand for silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now we're going to do public comments. Ruth is going to set some boundaries here.
Before we have public comments, I just want to remind everybody that the public comment time is limited to 15 minutes. Once that 15 minutes is up, the public comment period will be closed. During this time, anyone who has pre-signed up will get an opportunity to address the county board. However, the county board will not be asking you any questions, and they will not be responding to anything that you said. This is not another public hearing on the zoning matter such as happened last month. The board will be making a decision on that at a later time based upon information that they've already previously received from their packet. So, just so that you're aware of it, they will not be interacting with you during the public comment period.
All right, the first one on the list is Pat Gramley from Coloma.
My name is Pat Gramley, and my husband and I own property abutting the south side of the parcel that is located at N979 County CH Coloma. We are very concerned that this property is going to be rezoned intensive manufacturing, and it will set a precedence that will not be compatible with the comprehension plan for the town of Coloma. Excuse me. Our well is 125 feet deep and at a lower elevation than the waste system on the property that the applicant plans to be putting a slaughterhouse. We fear any accidental or careless breach in their waste system will put our well at risk, causing unsafe drinking water and the potential for E. coli and other diseases. Wisconsin State Statute of 1898, amended in 1903, Chapter 57, Section 1418, prohibits a slaughterhouse to be maintained or constructed within 1/8 of a mile from any dwelling. There are 3 homes that are within this distance. The applicant's consultant and investor has been affiliated with Black Earth Meats near Madison. He has been an operation manager there. However, according to the Wisconsin State Journal, he was also named as co-owner. The citizens are trying to get this slaughterhouse closed down and moved to another location. There have been numerous complaints, including blood and waste being swept into the drains, open and overflowing waste containers, blood in the gutter, and the waste truck leaking blood and urine in the streets as it passed through the village. Noise of the animals can be heard in the property owners' homes, and diesel trucks are running for hours to cover up the sound of the animals in distress waiting to be unloaded and slaughtered. The odors are so bad, the homeowners cannot enjoy their yards and have to keep their windows closed. Police have been called many times to check violations of animals being left overnight in the building, the noise nuisance ordinance, and illegal parking. Legal advice has been obtained to review all the ordinances that could be in violation. This is all at the taxpayer's expense. Property values have decreased considerably, and homes have remained on the market and unsold. This will be the problem in Coloma. And I'm sure the people in Black Earth will be looking for reevaluation of their property taxes. In the past 3 years, the Black Earth Meats has doubled their business, each year increasing their slaughter. In an interview in November 2012, the owner said he was actively exploring new sites, stating he cannot grow where he is. His goal is to slaughter 200 head of cattle a day. Okay. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Maxine Gears, Coloma.
Hi, I'm Maxine Gears. I live at N947 County Road CH, Coloma. My concerns are many with a slaughterhouse. What this could be turned into, or who will monitor this after it's going. This should be an industrial park or on Jesse's property. Not good for local business or employment. Will not be here. What would be a benefit? I will not be able to live in my own home or open my windows. I will be a prisoner in my own home. I will enjoy being in my yard and my garden. This will not happen anymore. The noises will be plenty from traffic, cattle, and swine. I do not want to see what Black Earth sees every day. The area property values will go down. We need to preserve the land. I will talk somewhat about the air. A major study was done on the impact of the environment. The processed gases are discharged into the air as a chemical which produces a strong acid condition of oxygen depletion that will discharge. The biodegradation of proteins from the meat will eventually lead to the discharge of ammonia oxidation into nitrate and bacteria, which takes more oxygen. Also causes toxic compounds such as air pollution and many health problems. The dust from cutting the bones, bad odor, and releases of discharge of gases such as CO2 and CO, amongst the other releases. Remnants also emit methane gas. Airborne contaminants create emissions that arise from both ventilation and passive releases, which are included toxic gases, particles, bacteria, and other odorous substances to the air, water, and soil. Affected populations. It says the rural communities harboring adverse impact have documented of areas' health, physical and mental health, and social health, creating an environmental justice issue for rural communities. Reports have documented associations, facilities in rural communities increase in self-reported respiratory disease such as asthma and bronchitis, impaired mental health, including depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, harassment of outspoken community members, and a general perception of local social neglect. And it says it's a decline in retail purchase made locally, more hired farm hands versus self-employed small acreage farmers, decreased tax revenue, degrade of the community fabric, and a decline in land and property values. And I do have a booklet, if that's off the internet, on all the slaughterhouse information I did give you. Thank you.
Next, we have Thomas Pinter from N633 4th Avenue, Coloma. Tom? You didn't want to speak? Oh, all right. Then we have Lonnie Bigelow from W4558 South Shore Drive in Wild Rose.
Okay, last month you may remember that I was here, and I've had these pictures passed out to everybody. If you want to take a look at them, our place is on the bottom. Our name is underneath it, and for instance, on the top is a place right across the lake from us. If you look on the map in the back.
Lonnie?
Yes.
Lonnie, explain what you're talking about before you start.
I'm talking about the floodplain.
Thank you.
On Long Lake. If you look on the map on the back page, you'll see there's two X's there. One on the south side, that's where we are, and one on the north side is where that place is on the top. As you can see, they're probably only 3 or 4 feet above and don't appear to be in the floodplain. If you look on the map of or the picture of our place, you look down about in the middle of the picture, you'll see 2 large rocks, and there's some steps there. The highest water we've ever seen there probably would be about to the second step. The other picture off by itself on the bottom is on the west side of the lake, and the FEMA floodplain line there goes to just about the back of the trailers. And if you look at that area, you'll see that actually behind the trailers, the land goes downhill. I just want to mention one other item, and that is that according to the ordinance that you passed, there is a section in there that's called boundary disputes. And certainly it would appear to what I see and the people I've talked to that this board would have the power to make these changes that we have here and these big discrepancies. My easy solution to the whole thing was to take the high water level and take that all the way around the lake, which is about 2 to 3 feet above the current water level and very close to where the DNR mapped it a number of years ago. Thank you.
Next we have Suzanne Zimmer, W4986 South Long Lake Road.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Zimmer. I'm a property owner at W4986 South Long Lake Road. I'm here to contest the flood zone A designation for my property and the entire shoreline of Long Lake in Saxville and Springwater townships. I have 2 questions for your consideration, and I have copies of this to put in your minutes. 1, would Waushara County do an elevation survey for Long Lake so that individuals can use that information to complete FEMA applications for exemptions from flood zones? Number 2, what can be done to overturn the flood zone A designation for our property on Long Lake? Long Lake is not a candidate for any flood. It is a glacier-carved, spring-fed seepage lake with no inlet or outlet. Long Lake is surrounded by hills, so there is no adjacent land for runoff. Moreover, there are many nearby corporate farms which have drilled artesian wells for pumping irrigation water 24/7. I'm sure some of you have been there, and it's pouring rain, and those irrigation things are going like mad. Thus, our water table could be in danger of being lowered in the future years, which may make us being in a flood zone even less of an issue. My family has held our property since 1945, and we have water level records since 1947 that show our lake has never been at any flood stage. Heavy rains sink into our sandy soil immediately. Long Lake is not a candidate for any flood. One of my questions to you is, how can you help us individual landowners overturn the flood zone A designation for our property on Long Lake? I must pay annual flood insurance now because our mortgage company demands it and would not grant me an exception even though I had documentation showing our structure was not in the flood zone. The annual premium quotes for the amount of insurance we need were from $2,250 a year to $458. Naturally, we took the $458, which we got in Wapaka, because they said, well, we know you aren't in a flood zone situation. So I'm now going to file for FEMA's letter of map revision or letter of map amendment. Can Waushara County do an elevation survey for Long Lake so we can have that information to complete FEMA's applications, which is really necessary, and it's a huge expense for each landowner to do a survey. In conclusion, I hope you are sensitive to the problems caused by your acceptance of the June 2013 FEMA Flood Zone A for Long Lake. Uh-oh. Sorry. Thanks.
Next is Russ Brown, W12085 Check Avenue in Richburg.
Good evening. I'm here to speak on the rezoning to intensive manufacturing for the slaughterhouse proposed for Coloma. I've been working with the citizens and the neighbors of the area. I live about 4 miles outside of Coloma. And we've been talking about this. We came to the public hearing at the zoning committee and presented a number of signatures and commentary about how we wish that not to happen, and we were quite surprised actually that it passed the zoning committee. I've reviewed the comprehensive plan for Coloma that was written in 2010, and looking at just the zoning area, it said the purpose of the plan is created for the general purpose of guiding a coordinated development pattern. This results in land use decisions that are harmonious with both the overall vision of the community's future and will ensure the future stability of the local natural resource base. The plan attempts to delineate the ground rules and guidelines for future development. I would say that the neighbors of this proposed change have a right to believe in this plan and to have faith in this plan that the investments that they made in their homes and their businesses will be supported by zoning that follows the plan. You heard testimony earlier about worrying about the smell and the issues that they had at the other slaughterhouse that was in Black Earth, and the law from 1903 that says a slaughterhouse cannot be placed within 1/8 of a mile of a residence. This zoning change is going to hurt their investment in their property. It's going to hurt their quality of life and possibly their health also. The change in the zoning will not be a net benefit to the community. It's going to hurt the adjoining property values. The real estate agent who's listing it felt that they would lose 30 to 40% of the value of their properties if this zoning change came through. We've talked to some of the other businesses in town, and they feel this will also hurt their businesses. A lot of them are tourist-type businesses. People drive up from Pleasant Lake, and they'll be driving right past this location. And again, with the issues that were expressed about Black Earth, the smells, the trucks, and all that type of thing may have people choose to go another direction. We put forth a thing here. We put forth a protest of this. It requires that 50% of the adjacent property owners, if they protest this zoning change, and what that does is it changes the simple majority to approve this zoning change to a major majority, which means 3 out of 4 of you supervisors have to approve this change.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to an approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion by Weddy.
Second.
Second by Mr. Crawford. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And we need approval of the minutes of the August 20, 2013 monthly meeting.
Motion to approve.
By Supervisor Crawford, second by Mr. Waddell. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now go to old business, and we don't have any. So we're going on to new business, and we will have a report presentation on the floodplain program overview. And Gary Henrich, Program and Policy Analyst, Dams and Floodplain Section of Wisconsin DNR, Terry Hochstedt, Waushara County Zoning Land Conservation Director.
We don't have enough for every board member. We have limits on color copies, but there's 3 sets of maps that we made long, pine, big, silver. So there's 4 sets that we want to distribute to the board members.
Okay.
Shows the changes to the flood zone on these lakes. Now we remapped all the lakes in Waushara County. There are just 3 examples. So as you can see by the legend, in the red, it's where the area of the floodplain got bigger. The green is where the area of the floodplain got smaller. If there is no color, there wasn't a change. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here representing the Department of Natural Resources and the First Federal Emergency Management Agency. My name is Gary Heinrichs. We produce these maps under contract with FEMA. This was part of a statewide and nationwide map modernization project that's been going on for about a decade. Through this project, we've updated maps in 62 of the 72 Wisconsin counties. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, of course. We've updated the maps in 62 of the 72 Wisconsin counties. This money was appropriated by the U.S. Congress back in 2003. In brief, the Federal Emergency Management Agency requested about $3 billion nationwide to update the nation's maps, to bring everything up to current mapping standards, to update the topographic survey information, do new floodplain studies where appropriate. The criteria for that were basically population, expected population growth, number of flood insurance policies in force, and other metrics such as housing units and things like that. Unfortunately, we only got about $1 billion, so about 1/3 of the dollars requested. Still, we're mandated to update the maps for 95% of the nation's population. So that's what FEMA's directive was. We were brought on as one of the contractors, along with several private engineering firms, to update the maps. In the case of Waushara County, they joined the program in 1991. So the floodplain maps that you see before you today, the 2013 maps, show the same bodies of water that had floodplain in 1991. Now the floodplain boundaries have changed, but we have not added floodplain to any new lakes or any new streams or rivers in the county. What we have to do to meet FEMA mapping standards is we have to rectify the mapping and the floodplain boundaries to match the topographic contour lines. Now in some more populated areas, southeastern Wisconsin, the Madison area, Fox River Valley, many counties had allocated funds to do two-foot topographic mapping, or what they call LIDAR mapping. And because of the higher populations and flood insurance policy base in those counties, in many cases we were able to do new studies. In the case of Waushara County, there were some old studies done on some of the rivers, but on the lakes, basically what they did back in 1991 is they showed the entire lake itself as a floodplain, and then they tried to match it to the topographic information they had at the time to meet the lines. The topographic boundary lines have to match the floodplain boundary lines. What we did in Waushara County, we had a very, very small budget because of the small county population, small flood insurance policy base, is we basically digitized the old maps, put them into a GIS format. We got an orthophoto layer, and then our GIS analysts had to match those county topographic lines, which are 10-foot contours. So there's a 5-foot margin of error plus or minus because of the inaccuracy of the 10-foot contours. Those 10-foot contours are derived from USGS quad maps, the same kind of maps people use when they go out fishing or hunting or trekking through the North Woods. It's not very good information, it's not very accurate, but under our FEMA contract, we are bound to match those floodplain boundaries of those topo lines. Now, in some cases, as you look at these maps, where they, as I said, the green areas are where the floodplain shrunk. We had to pull in the floodplain to match that topo line. In the red areas, unfortunately, we had to pull the topo line, the floodplain boundary out to match that 10-foot topo line. So there were adjustments made. There was no study done. There was no budget for that. It is entirely possible that the floodplain boundaries is too conservative, is too large. The only way to determine that is either for someone to pay to have an engineering study done, or if someone feels that they are out based on elevation, they can hire a surveyor to get adjacent grades around their structure, their lowest lot elevation, and submit that to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which will calculate an approximate base flood elevation that can be used for any individual lot determination through the letter of map amendment process. The woman spoke before about getting a LOMA. That's what is happening throughout the state. As I said, this is going on in 62 different counties. Waushara is one of the last counties we've done. We started back in 2007 in southeast Wisconsin and working our way north and west. And I've had these issues in almost every county I've dealt with. It's unfortunate. We wish we had more funding to do more. In some of the lakes in Waushara County, one of our floodplain engineers in the past had developed a BFE when we had more staff. We no longer have that capability or authority to do that. Long Lake does not have it. I don't know if Pine Lake has a BFE and Silver Lake. No. So it's kind of hit and miss throughout the county which lakes have a base flood elevation, regardless of whether we have a BFE from one of our engineers. FEMA charges nothing to calculate an approximate BFE to determine if flood insurance is required or not. However, the property owner or in combination with county funds will have to pay for that survey work. And that's not necessarily to survey in the base flood elevation around the lake, but just to get the topographic information more accurate on an individual lot. So that's what I can tell you is the process that everyone else in the state is following. It's too late to appeal the maps. You know, we had the open house about a year ago, I think, December of 2012. We cannot send individual letters of notice out to every property owner. We only have a budget to put a notice in the official paper, which is what we did. I think Terry posted it probably. We had a fairly good turnout. I think we had 20, 25 people there. That was folks' opportunity to review the maps, and if they had better information, they could submit that. But the reality is, even if they came to that meeting, disagreed with the boundary of the floodplain because they put their house in, and they wanted to contest it, they would still have to have a survey done and submit that to FEMA to redraw the boundary. And in all likelihood, if it's just for a single lot, a quarter, half-acre lot, it probably wouldn't have changed the line in the map if FEMA would issue a letter of map amendment removing the flood insurance purchase requirement for that property. So that opportunity that was there last December is still here. Unfortunately, as I said, the property owners, I know it doesn't seem fair, but I've had to deal with this issue in 62 other counties, have to pay the cost of the survey unless the county is willing to partner with them to provide better survey information. We do not have any budget to do anything more than what FEMA has already budgeted for. These maps are final, they are effective, the county board has adopted them. Any change to the maps or any change in flood zone determinations for property flood insurance have to go through federal government right now. The county board, unfortunately, really has no role in that anymore. Any questions about the process?
So in other words, you didn't, or the people that worked on this flood map didn't have to shoot laterals?
No, we had no budget to come out and shoot any survey data.
That they can only change things if they pay.
Yes, that's correct. Engineer or surveyor. Mm-hmm.
What experience are you finding in other counties? Are the lake management districts hiring somebody as a group to shoot these laterals, or what are you experiencing in other areas?
Frankly, we haven't had a lot of problems with lakes. It's mostly been with rivers. And yes, we have had not districts so much, but neighborhoods get together. We've had entire subdivisions placed in the floodplain, and they will hire one surveyor to do the whole subdivision because it's a lot cheaper that way. The biggest expense is just having those guys come out, find the closest benchmark, bringing it into the lot, and then tying it in and shooting elevations at the lot. That's the big expense, especially in the rural areas like Waushara County. The nearest benchmark might be miles away. So they have to do survey work and tie in that benchmark to different points along the highway, property lines. Once they have that benchmark elevation brought in, it's relatively straightforward just to shoot the lowest floor elevation, the lowest adjacent grade around the structure, and submit it. So in fact, we had a community in Buffalo County where they did a 1-foot survey for the entire community of 1,000 people because they had about 70 properties put in the floodplain. That's my recommendation. I cannot, off the top of my head, think of a lake district that has done such. You know, Waupaca County had maps that went effective in 2010. There were some concerns, I think, on Bear Lake, where a number of property owners got together up there, I believe. Marquette County had new maps shortly before Waushara County. I haven't heard any problems up there. Marathon County got new maps a couple of years ago, so did Portage County. I have not heard of any lake associations doing anything up there, but it's possible that there are other lake associations that are working on this. One way to find out might be to call the Wisconsin Association of Lakes office in Madison. They might have some information about that. Might be worth a phone call to them. Yes, sir.
I think when this issue came before the county board for approval, we were kind of misled because we weren't informed that this is what was going to happen.
Well, no one knows what's going to happen. You see, even if the floodplain boundaries had not changed on the lakes, what happens when new maps come out is that the lenders, by federal regulation, are required to review their entire loan portfolio, every loan they hold for real property, to see if it's in a floodplain. Now, there may be cases where 20 years ago someone bought a house, got a mortgage. Maybe the bank at that time was a little lax on enforcing flood insurance requirements, so they've let it go for all these years. But now, the feds, not FEMA, there's 6 different federal regulatory entities like the Federal Reserve, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, that regulate different lending institutions based on whether they're state chartered, federally chartered, credit unions, savings and loans. They all have different, but they all have regulations, and they've tightened up on that oversight and penalties. So now the banks are very aware of that. So every time there's new maps, even if the floodplain boundaries don't change, people like Terry get a lot of phone calls because people that have always been in the floodplain back to maybe the 90s in this county all of a sudden are getting those letters from the lenders saying you have 45 days to buy a flood insurance policy or we will force place it for you. So it's a combination of just getting new maps in general, and in some cases the boundaries are changing.
I still think you should have come to us before we made that approval and told us what consequences could be.
But if I'm not mistaken, the county board approving the ordinance didn't approve the maps. The maps were approved by FEMA and we had to adopt them, correct?
To stay in good stand in the National Flood Insurance Program, you had to adopt them. Even if you hadn't adopted them, or even if you chose at this point to drop out, those maps are still in effect for the lenders. The lenders still will require flood insurance. So whether you participate or not, flood insurance of those properties will still be required. That's why we have the open house. We work with the county zoning office to apprise them of changes in the floodplain maps. Beyond that, we haven't been getting any directive or funding to come to every community. We have 540 communities in the state and appear before the local governing body. I would be happy to do it if we had the manpower and the funding to do it, but we just don't. Terry asked me as a favor to come up here, and I'm here to answer any of your questions. But beyond that, because of the stage we're at here, there's not little more that we can do on your behalf. We can provide technical assistance to you if you have questions about appealing through the letter of map amendment process. We don't have any funding for it, but we can certainly answer questions and provide assistance to any property owners through your offices or through Terry's office.
I guess the only other thing is how many lakes actually had new maps put out that are in our
what I'm
county?
saying is that every lake that has a floodplain map now had a floodplain map before.
Okay.
We did not add any floodplain maps for any additional lakes.
Okay.
The boundaries change on some, but they always had a floodplain before.
Okay, so you'd almost have to look at each lake to see the before and after.
Right.
Okay.
And the open house that you held, even if the citizens had gone to the open house, there's nothing that they could have done.
Well, they would have had to hire a surveyor and submit elevation data, right.
So, yeah, just to go to see the maps would not have done any good.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Terry?
I just want to make sure that you understand that these maps were adopted by FEMA, and then we've incorporated them into our program. Our responsibility is the construction standards, and that helps keep the flood insurance rates lower. We don't have anything to do with the insurance, so there is one municipality in Waushara County that is not compliant with the floodplain program, and those people still have to get flood insurance based on these maps. These maps were presented at the same hearing, and so flood insurance is different than the construction standards that the county is trying to enforce and keep those insurance rates low. This is also not something that just came up. People had to do this before we adopted new maps on a fairly regular basis. You know that there's been a lot of disasters, and so people have been looking at flood insurance policies and mortgages more and more. And so this has come up before we adopted the new maps. It does seem like now all of a sudden there is a hot spot on Long Lake, and we were not aware that anything had changed because there was no new information. You know, I kind of always said it was a shame that we're going to get prettier maps, but they're not going to be any more detailed and have any better information. So that's what I want you to remember, that there's a difference between flood insurance and what the county enforces as far as construction standards, to try to keep those rates low and protect health and property and all that stuff too. So, do you have any questions for me?
All right, we're going to move on to the social host ordinance background. Ted Barrow and Sue Shemansky from Human Services Department, and Lieutenant Jeff Nett from the Sheriff's Department.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to be able to make this presentation. The presentation that you're going to see tonight has been modified from the one that we presented to villages and the City of Wautoma and the Town Board Association. As a result of our presentations, the Village of Plainfield did adopt the social host ordinance, and so did the Town of Marion. And both of them have the penalties from $1,000 to $5,000, and we'll be talking more about that later. Many of the ones that we talked to, especially the towns, wanted the county board to pass the social host ordinance, and I think I mentioned that to you when I presented. I forget what month it was. So I want to thank you for considering to adopt a social host ordinance for Waushara County. Sue, Jeff, and I would like to share a PowerPoint now that was developed in Marathon County. Those of us in prevention like to share with one another so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you will see on some of the slides Marathon County or AODA partnership, and also Waushara Prevention Council that they allowed us to put on the slide. So, Sue?
Okay, next slide. We have our own slide person here.
Got it.
Gosh, good. Okay. Just to give you a little bit of background about the underage drinking problem, Wisconsin, as you probably know, ranks #1 in almost every category in the nation related to alcohol, including alcohol consumption by teens and adults, binge drinking, drinking and driving, and 30-day use amongst teenagers. And all of our schools participate in a statewide survey where we can find out how much and how many kids are drinking on a monthly basis. And we know that kids drink hard, kids drink fast. They don't just, drink a couple beers with their pizza, probably like most of us did when we were teenagers. We drink a lot, and the goal is really to get drunk. So you can click it again, Deb. The youth, one thing we know from the research about alcohol use is that kids who start drinking before age 15 have a five times greater chance of developing alcohol dependence or abuse problems later in life than those who wait until they're 21. So we're trying to prevent kids from drinking at a younger age. Between 2010 and 2011, there were 266 underage drinking citations written in Waushara County by our local sheriff's department and by the police departments. And according to the survey that the schools are doing, which we'll be doing again coming this March, so the statistics we have right now are from 2011,
35% of high schoolers drank in the last 30 days and 16% of 8th graders. You might think, okay, well, a lot of times adults think, well, we all drank when we were kids. Yeah, you can switch it, Deb. And so what are we worried about? You know, we lived through it, but there are many consequences to underage drinking. And what we're seeing is people have gotten a lot better about drinking and driving, and they're being more careful about that. But there's so many other dangers to young people besides just driving, and that's overdosing, poisoning. We're seeing more kids going to emergency rooms because of alcohol and other drug use, suicides, pregnancies, you know, STDs, addiction, car accidents, and finally, and probably most importantly, death, which we have experienced in this county even in the last few months with a young person. So we want to try to prevent these consequences by adopting social host ordinances. So I think you're going to talk now, right?
Yes. Good evening. One of the things we run into is as we try to target underage drinking, that target keeps on moving on us. Several years ago, we made an emphasis, and we've got a good working relationship with our Tavern League in this county. And with their cooperation, we have done compliance checks in taverns, and that's not really an issue anymore. We worked compliance checks with the grocery stores and the gas stations that sell beer and alcohol in the county, and working with them and through our enforcement efforts, we've got that under hand. But where our problem is occurring now is the parents that host the party on their land, their home. The parents think they're doing the right thing by having everybody turn in their car keys or collecting their car keys at the door. That's not the answer. That's not the help. With these underage drinking parties, we're getting kids that we had one incident we know of where a person got seriously burned because they fell into a bonfire. We've had instances where people have left the homes, gotten involved in traffic crashes just down the road from where the parties were. Our investigation leads us to the fact that they left a party that somebody had on their private property. So it's not the case of the persons drinking in the taverns or getting that on their own. We're finding a lot of this is condoned by the parents. Our school resource officer is constantly coming to us and advising us of parties that are being held at residences, and they're upfront and telling us that the parents are allowing it to happen. We try to get our cars to work those areas and to be visible and try to head those off, but this is what we're running up against, and this is why we would like to see this ordinance in place. Under the present state law, it's kind of gray, as you know, the law does not allow a person to provide or procure alcohol for an underage person, and that's pretty clear cut and everybody understands that. But when we get into the responsibilities of somebody hosting a party or allowing a party to take place on their property, that's where I think we're running into a little bit of a gray area. There's been some talk of the state legislature addressing this same type of ordinance that we're asking for here tonight, but everything we've seen, there's no movement from the state on that level. But we believe that this ordinance would give us the ability to address all aspects of the underage drinking problems we occur. It's a problem that is not going to go away. Like I say, we try to head it off in one area and it keeps on moving. We think that this would give us a good avenue to handle that and to address that issue.
So we're here to talk about an incredible opportunity for those of us living in the 21st century, and that's the opportunity to address an issue that's been around for a long time. And that is where are kids drinking, the location, which includes land, homes, hotel rooms, cabins, cottages, campers, boats, fields, etc. A lot of places are named in the social host ordinance. The penalty, the municipal forfeiture, not including the court cost, doesn't go on a criminal record, okay? The goal is not to put people in jail. The wide range of the forfeiture that we have in this ordinance allows for a community to measure the severity of the offense. And if this is somebody who's hosted before, which is why we had the range from 1,000 to 5,000. 1,000 being for the person who might be hosting for the first time, and if they host more often than that, then the fine would go up, the forfeiture would go up. The places in the states that do have the social host ordinance want to make sure that the fine is strong enough and high enough that it sends a message to people who are providing the space for kids to drink. Okay. Yes.
Our ordinance proposed, actually, though, the forfeiture range is $500 to $10,000.
Right.
I took it right from the state statute, so our forfeiture range is a little bit different than that one.
Yeah, and I was going to talk about that too, but that's fine that you brought that up. So, okay, and in the ordinance that the county has before them, the forfeiture would go up according to the number of times the people might have provided the place for the party. So, okay, so what it isn't, it's not a duplication of state law, okay? Statute 125 of the Wisconsin state law perhaps prohibits the selling, dispensing, or giving alcohol to underage persons. But this doesn't include the parent-child relationship. It does not include penalizing those that provide the location, but the state ordinance right now does not include penalizing those that provide the location for these parties to take place. The ordinance does not take away a parent's rights to give alcohol to their children if they so choose, but it would penalize them for giving it to somebody else's children or allowing others' children to drink on their property. It is not a criminal offense. It is a municipal citation. And the ordinance is not the same as the civil liability laws, which allow those injured or perished to sue in civil court for damages. So the social host ordinance benefits covers a wide range of situations that the state law didn't see, where an underage person could end up just as drunk, in as much trouble, or just as dead. The burden of proof is less compared to the criminal offenses, which includes known or should have known, as it relates to any private premises available for underage drinking, compared to the state law. So a parent could not be fined if they did not know there was going to be an underage drinking party on their property. The person should have known or did know, okay? But if they didn't know, then they would not be able to be fined. Waushara County can proclaim that anyone who hosts these parties will receive a swift and certain punishment if they break the law.
We are already investigating reports of underage parties, as I said before, and this would just round out our abilities to deal with this situation. A lot of the times we are not finding the person is procuring the alcohol. The kids are getting it on their own. However, it's usually an older sibling or a friend that's of age that's buying it or furnishing it. A lot of times we're understanding that the kids are taking it right from the refrigerator or the liquor cabinet at the residence, whether the parents know about it or not. So, you know, how they're getting it is the one thing we're dealing with, but when the parents are actively or condoning this type of activity, this is where we need this ordinance to allow us to address those issues, because what we're seeing more times than not is these underage kids are having parties on private property, and that's where we're having the issues, that's where we're having the problems. So.
How do you prove if a parent? How do you prove if a parent did not know of this? The parents are out of town for the weekend. The kids are home.
Our experience has been that when we start to get several people that we're citing for an underage party, they're talking and they're cooperating with our deputies, and we're able to piece together, you know, how the events unfolded for that evening or for that day. And a lot of times, it does come forward that mom and dad are away, they're out of state on vacation, or they are not in the area. That's a situation where the ordinance would say we would not cite those parents because they weren't in the area, they weren't aware of it. I mean, that would be evident through our talking with everybody involved. But more times than not, we're getting from the underage people that, well, Joe's ma was the one that was collecting the car keys and telling everybody, don't go and vomit back in the flower beds or something like this. I mean, that's the type of action where we would like to use this ordinance. So it would be due diligence on our part to really look at the situation and make sure that we could prove the parents were condoning this.
Thank you.
I remember when I gave the presentation to the town of Springwater, somebody did have a question, well, what about if kids are drinking at the graduation party that we're throwing? That again would be something that the law enforcement would have to look at to see if, the alcohol was well monitored so the kids couldn't get at it or just what. But, kids are not allowed to drink, even if it is a graduation party or a prom party. And it's about time we adults, as parents, as citizens, as community members, let our young kids know that. Because as Sue mentioned, the younger they start drinking, under 21, the more likely they are to have alcohol problems and later on in life. And believe me, there's enough people out there that have the alcohol problems. So, let's try to curtail that by limiting out underage drinking. So, okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I know that when my daughter was in high school, there were parents that were allowing, they'd say, well, just leave the car keys, don't go anywhere. And at that time, there was nothing law enforcement could do about it because they were staying right there and probably didn't smash. But now, with this ordinance, there is something we can do about it. And I think it's time that we stand up and tell them we don't want it here. So, thank you very much. Okay, we'll go to discussion and possible action items. Operational agreement between Washera County and the United States Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources, Conservation Services, and that is in your packet.
I'll make a motion that we adopt this ordinance for NRC.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. Motion by Bernadette, second by Everett Eckstein. Are there any questions or comments concerning this agreement? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, next we have the Security Committee, security recommendations, and I believe Judge Dutcher is going to address us concerning that.
Just nod at me when you need a slide.
It's not my forte.
Raise a finger.
Yeah.
May it please the board, I'm appearing on behalf of the Washera County Security Committee.
to address a concern that has been growing, in particular through recent months, regarding the overall approach to security that is currently being taken here at the courthouse. I probably don't need to remind everyone of some recent events that have happened that I think have heightened this level of concern. Less than 2 blocks from here, there was a critical incident less than a month ago where shots were exchanged and an individual greatly distressed was involved in an interaction with multiple Waushara County law enforcement officers and law enforcement agencies from multiple jurisdictions. There's been a very significant increase in criminal activity in our county involving firearms and controlled substances taken in concert with one another, individuals who have threatened responding authorities to those types of critical incidents, and threats that have been made with individuals who are infirm from a mental health standpoint, people who are the subject ultimately of mental health commitment proceedings. There have been multiple incidents of direct threats that have been made to courthouse personnel, both in the court system and others who are involved in many of the administrative obligations here, in particular on the second floor of the courthouse. A lot of individuals are presenting as increasingly dissatisfied litigants, displaying emotional instability, persons even appearing either in offices or in the courtroom intoxicated. Currently, our law enforcement presence in the courthouse and in particular in the court system proper is at best sporadic. We have individuals who are able to come and go as they basically please here within the courthouse facility, attending proceedings where there's virtually no law enforcement presence. The only officer that we have periodically here is assigned in multiple capacities to locations ancillary to the courthouse, not involved with anything directly involving either the courthouse facility or the North Annex. The panic alarm system that was implemented about 15 years ago is virtually obsolete because when that system was installed, the Sheriff's Department was located downstairs and we had law enforcement personnel basically at the beck and call of anyone in the courthouse who needed assistance. Currently, the effectiveness of the alarm system is directly related to the availability of an officer to respond, and that could be anywhere from seconds if someone is present on the courthouse facility to several minutes if no one is in the immediate vicinity of the courthouse. Why are we concerned about the people that are here? Well, there are a lot more folks. Because of the addition or renovation that was made downstairs, there are now more than 90 people who work just in this building alone, in the courthouse alone. We have more patrons because there's more business being done. We are facing stressful times, in particular the folks that are dealing with people in human services, where there are a number of different stressors that are presented, whether child protection issues, financial issues, or other concerns implicating family. The people who are here on the second floor traditionally and continually are dealing with individuals who are dealing with distressed situations, people in zoning, people in child support, and of course the district attorney's office and the court system being somewhat at the epicenter of where all of those issues tend to come to a head. And for that reason, there's a lot more risk. The Security Committee, recognizing all of these circumstances, is making a series of recommendations to the board about how we address security here in the courthouse in order to bring ourselves into line with the 21st century and with 21st century issues. And those recommendations are an attempt to try and recognize that there are a number of financial constraints that, practically speaking, are present here, but issues that need to be addressed in the immediate future and then ultimately long term. From a short-term standpoint, solutions that we recommend are consolidating courthouse access to a single entrance. Currently, we have what amount to 3 unmonitored entrances. We're also recommending that there be 2 uniformed officers that are assigned to the courthouse. One who would monitor the lone entrance, and the other who would have responsibility for the entirety of the building, with principal obligations being focused here on the 2nd floor, where most of the concerns that would arise are likely to take place. We're also recommending that there be a strict policy implemented to require all employees or persons who are working at the courthouse to wear identification badges, to assist the officers in recognizing who is an employee and someone who has an immediate need to be present, and an individual who could potentially present as a risk if they are engaged in questionable conduct and are not demonstrating the type of identification that would be expected. Those are the short-term solutions that we are offering that are within relatively reasonable economic considerations, again appreciating that these are difficult financial times. We also have recommendations from a long-term perspective, which are ultimately going to be essential if we're to bring ourselves into compliance with the type of risk that is presented. And those recommendations are that there be a study done to the courthouse facility to evaluate where it would be best to remodel so that there can be accommodations for a security station. This station would be at the lone courthouse entrance that we are recommending be implemented on a short-term basis. There would be screening capabilities similar to what one experiences when they entered the courthouse facilities in neighboring counties, principally Green Lake County, Dodge County, other locales that have more contemporary facilities. This facility would then be upgraded with a magnetometer, which is a device similar to what you see at an airport, along with an x-ray machine that would be capable of monitoring any type of carry-ins that are coming into the courthouse. And this would be monitored ultimately by a sworn law enforcement officer, as it is in Green Lake County currently. The second recommendation would be that a second sworn law enforcement officer be assigned to the courthouse on a full-time basis with primary responsibility here on the 2nd floor. Those solutions, long-term, we feel would bring our county into alignment with the type of risk that I think we are all currently facing and the type of circumstance that we all hope to prevent for the virtually hundreds of people who do business in this building on a daily basis. Are there any questions?
Do we have surveillance cameras inside and outside the building? And if we do, who is monitoring those?
I don't want to get into all of the details about where the surveillance cameras are because it is a security system. The answer is yes, there are surveillance cameras. They are monitored at the Sheriff's Department, but they do not monitor all of the areas of concern. And again, the surveillance cameras, frankly, are more applicable in a responsive mode, dealing with an incident after it has occurred and finding accountability for those responsible, rather than a preventative measure where you have an individual significantly attenuated from where the event is happening, trying to interpret without even being able to hear. So yes, we have security cameras, but they are more of a responsive mechanism than they are preventative. Supervisor Tom.
I have a couple questions. First, is the Safety Committee and the Security Committee, are they the same committee?
No. The Security Committee is formulated at the direction of the Wisconsin Supreme Court to oversee security and safety measures within the court system and within generally the courthouse proper. That's different and distinct from the Safety Committee, with which I'm not directly involved.
And who are members of the Security Committee?
I defer to Corporation Counsel Zowski. I frankly, of the Safety Committee, I'm not sure.
No, Security.
The Security Committee would include myself, the Clerk of Courts, the District Attorney, Chairman Collada, Chairperson Collada, Mr. Dahlke from the Highway Department, the Building and Grounds Superintendent, Mr. Grams, the Sheriff's Department through the Sheriff Peterson and Lieutenant Nett, Family Court Commissioner, are all people who serve on that committee. I'm sure I've forgotten some, but those are the people who regularly meet, and we meet on a quarterly basis, although we've met more frequently recently.
As far as I know, Wapaka County and Winnebago County both instituted a metal detector system, and a couple of years ago, both of them have discontinued it. And I can't believe that Washare County is any worse off than either one of those two counties. The other question I have is, how do you anticipate paying for this? I assume it's going to, if you hire 2 additional officers and have a metal detector, it probably costs over $200,000.
I can't speak to what has happened in the other counties. I don't know. I know the counties that I frequent have law enforcement personnel available in every courtroom, whether it's Portage County, whether it's Green Lake County, whether it's Dodge County. Winnebago County has a bailiff in every single courtroom.
We don't have a bailiff?
No, sir. There are no law enforcement personnel in the courtroom when court is in session on a regularly scheduled basis. As far as the other types of security measures that you've made reference to, I can't speak to that. I just know what is present in the jurisdictions with which I am familiar. As far as where the funding comes from, we recognize there are a lot of issues here. This is going to be a progressive response to an imminent problem. And one of the ideas that has been discussed is perhaps staffing the recommendations we are making on a short-term basis with non-sworn officers who would be individuals that are not immediately under the law enforcement umbrella, but would perhaps be special deputies, persons who have a law enforcement appearance, that are able to assist in maintaining order, that are able to communicate with dispatch were there to be a difficult situation that would arise, and then ultimately moving toward having sworn personnel, actual Sheriff's Department deputies that would staff on a long-term basis. That is the recommendation that we currently feel is the most prudent one to make in light of the threat that I think is imminent in every single place that does business like we do.
Mr. Dutcher, could you go back to the short-term part, Deb? You're saying 2 uniformed officers. Is it possible, Judge, that we could get by with 1 to start out with?
1 would be better than where we are now.
Okay.
We have a very conscientious and faithful individual who serves our courthouse now, but his attention is becoming more and more diverted to responsibilities outside of the courthouse, and frankly, he is not present other than by essentially invitation. And most of the situations we're concerned about, we don't have any foreseeability in responding to. 1 officer would be better than where we are currently. 2 would be ideal because you'd have 1 monitoring what's going on downstairs as people come in, and you'd have another who's able to respond up here.
I was just looking at that if we had 1 to start out with and then maybe work ourselves a little bit because of budgets and everything else.
We understand that. We're making a recommendation short-term that would address the concerns that we feel are present short-term, although we recognize that there are budget constraints that all of you are facing and are appreciative of anything that you're able to provide to the folks that are here at the courthouse. And consolidation of the entrances is going to go a long way toward that because of the control you're going to have over people coming and going.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have some concerns with this, and I think with the people that come and go to the courthouse, limiting it to 1 entrance and I can just visualize the people with wheelchairs and handicapped people going through this security to go down to the basement levels. I could see doing this in the courtroom areas, this floor upstairs in that area. I don't think you need to lock down the courthouse, take away all these entrances. I'm not in favor of closing the entrances at all in this building, and I think that we have an officer in the courthouse now that his duty should be reassigned, so he is here when he needs to be here, and the other duties go back to another person or another individual or somewhere else, because that person is here, has offices, has everything established, and I think that's where it should be handled.
I'll respond to your questions in order. As far as the consolidated entrance, it would need to be handicap accessible. It would need to be sensitive to the Americans with Disabilities Act. The jurisdictions that use this type of a system, and there are many of them in our immediate midst, yes, there are some adjustments that need to be made. People ultimately respond to them and understand what it is going to be expected as far as their having access to the facility. That has been my experience in dealing with other jurisdictions where this type of security system is in place. Green Lake County being a classic example of that. Everybody goes in one place. As far as the officer who is assigned here, I can't speak to how that officer is assigned. That's a sheriff's department issue, and it does not come under any type of control that any of us in the court system are able to direct. And the simple reality is that that individual has obligations that very frequently require that he be taken away from the courthouse facility. And there have been occasions where, because of his paying faithful attention to his other duties, he has not been available. And we've been in a situation where we did not have a law enforcement presence on this facility.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I believe this is something that needs to be taken to public safety. Perhaps Judge Dutcher would come and maybe District Attorney later would come to a public safety meeting, and I think we need it to be sooner rather than later, so we can address this along with our budget concerns. So I think maybe we need to get together after this meeting and set up a time and date that we can get together and talk about this. That's all right with
I'll certainly do whatever it is the safety committee or anyone else requests. Again, I'm speaking on behalf of the security committee and the concerns that we formulated. Thank you for your time.
Yes, we probably do need a motion to send this to committee. Motion by Eckstein, second by Kirchner. Are there any other questions? And we can send the agenda out to everyone, and so if you all want to come to that meeting, you can. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next, we have consideration of possible action on the following resolutions and ordinances.
Resolution number 37-9-13 regarding the dedicated work and contributions of County Board Supervisor Robert Jones to the residents and employees of Waushara County.
Motion by Larry Tim, second by Larry Crawford. Who was quite a character and did a good job. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Resolution number 38-9-13, acknowledgement of George Wilson's dedicated service to Waushara County Board of Adjustment.
Motion by Kirschner, second by Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Resolution number 39-9-13, resolution authorizing child support specialist position to increase from 34 hours per week to 40 hours per week.
Madam Chair, I move to approve.
Motion by Weddy, second by Mrs. Krantz. Are there any questions or comments? Larry?
Shouldn't this have gone to personnel before it comes to the board?
It went to executive. It did go to the executive committee. It did not go to personnel. I guess that's your call. If you want it to go back to personnel, it can.
Well, it seems to me it would be a personnel issue.
Doesn't matter to me, whatever you want to do.
I guess if you wanted to go to personnel, we can do that and then bring it back here, but, Dennis, you are familiar with this. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I guess it's child support. Kim, do you have any, would you like to?
I guess part of it, just a second, Kim, part of it is that personnel hasn't met, and we were trying to get this done so we could work it into the budget. But if you want it, we can have a personnel meeting really fast if you want. And then it would have to come to the October board meeting. I'm sorry, Kim, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
My name is Kim Stebbins. I'm the child support director. The reason that I'm asking for the increase is we are anticipating increased revenue from the governor's budget. He did pass an increase of funds, and so we want to utilize those funds to make that position that was 34 hours a week to 40 hours a week dedicated. The dedication for all staff, 100% in my office, would allow maximize customer service, and our revenue is performance-based, so having the dedication is very important to make sure we get all the funds we can. So,
Larry, the reason it came to executive is because we're the home committee for child support. So it came to our committee because that's the committee she reports to.
If we change it from 34 to 48 hours in child support, what happens to the other 6 hours that the district attorney was getting?
We'll have to find another person to fill those hours. That money is still in our budget. We just have to hire somebody to work those 6 hours. If there's not a job share position available with somebody else in the courthouse, have a potential for a retired employee to come back for those hours.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call.
Mr. Heisey.
Yes.
Mr. Tim.
Nay.
Mr. Piaski.
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein. Mr. Weddy.
Yes.
Mrs. Kalana.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Wadel.
Yes.
Mr. Crawford.
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
Mrs. Krentz.
Yes.
Resolution number 40-9-13, resolution authorizing transfer of funds from general fund to cover refund of purchase price of tax deed property.
Ruth, do you want to explain this, or do you want me to try?
Oh, I thought you were doing the motion first.
All right, we'll get a motion first. Motion by Piaski,
I'll second.
second by Weddy. No.
Okay. What had happened was one of the parcels that we had taken on tax deed, when we got the appraisal back and the legal description and advertised for it, we advertised and had it appraised at, I believe it was 9 acres. And when the gentleman purchased it, he had it surveyed so that he would be able to know exactly where things were, because there was a small building on it, and it was less than 3 acres. And so he came to the executive committee and wanted some kind of adjustment because he really got not what we had advertised for. And what had happened was is that the parcel is cut off by a county road, and it looks like the road moved, but the description never got changed. And so, and some reason our appraiser did not catch that. I mean, it was a significant difference, and we should have thought that it was a significant difference. And in order to make him whole, the committee agreed that they would refund his purchase price, and
what happened to the tax situation on that property? Then was it, since, I assume this occurred after the 1st of January? So it was probably listed on the tax roll in the new property owner's name, and he probably got an assessment on it. So it probably, what I'm saying is that he probably should be refunded the taxes also on it.
I'd have to double check on that. He didn't bring anything up about the
No,
taxes
he
to the
didn't.
committee, and I'm not sure what it is, but I can check on that.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote on this as well.
Mr. Tim?
Aye.
Mr. Piaski?
Aye.
Mr. Eckstein? Mr. Weddy?
Aye.
Mrs. Colada?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Wadel?
Aye.
Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
Mr. Kirschner?
Aye.
Mrs. Krantz?
Aye.
Mr. Heisey? Resolution number 41-9-13, Cooperation Agreement for CDBG Program.
Motion by Piaski to approve, I'm assuming.
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Weddy. All right, Deb, you're on.
Okay, all right. Waushara County is part of a regional group for the Community Development Block Grant. And originally, Wapaka County was going to be the lead county for the financial purpose and the administration of this program. We found out just a couple months ago that Wapaka has chosen not to do that, and Juneau has signed up. So the original resolution we had recognized Wapaka County as the lead agency, and this one reflects that it's going to be Juneau County.
All right, are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign.
Ordinance number 564. Ordinance amending Waushara County zoning maps pursuant to the authority granted in Chapter 58 Waushara County Code, zone change Jesse Kessenich, Town of Coloma.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would move to deny it.
Motion by Weddy, second by Eckstein. All right, are there any questions or comments? All right, this will also be a roll call vote.
Does everybody understand that if you, an aye vote means you agree to deny it, and a nay vote means you don't agree to deny it? Does that make sense? Okay.
Mr. Piaski.
Aye.
Mr. Eckstein. Mr. Weddy.
Aye.
Mrs. Colada.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Mr. Wadel.
Aye.
Mr. Crawford.
Aye.
Mr. Kirschner.
Aye.
Mrs. Krantz.
Aye.
Mr. Heisey. Mr. Tim.
Nay.
All right, it is passed that we are denying the zoning change.
Ordinance number 565, ordinance amending Waushara County zoning maps pursuant to the authority granted in Chapter 58 Waushara County Code, zone change Jason Pennow, Town of Watoma.
Motion by Kirschner, second by Waddell to approve.
Yes.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign.
Ordinance number 566, social host ordinance.
Before you make a motion on this, if you make a motion to approve it, I need you to, tell me what you want the effective date to be too, because I noticed after the packets went out, this ordinance was originally drafted to come to you in the spring and take effect in the summer, so the effective date is already passed. So I
And
need you
this-
to make if you make a motion to approve, I need it to include the effective date.
Council, what would you suggest be an effective date? October 1st?
That would be fine.
With that in mind, I'll move to approve ordinance 566 with that change to have it effective October 1st of 2013.
Motion by Weddy, second by Kirchner. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Ordinance number 567, an ordinance authorizing the Waushara County Highway Committee / Highway Commissioner to contract with local municipalities pursuant to Chapter 83.035 Wisconsin statutes.
Motion by Wato,
I'll second it.
second by Krantz to approve, this is to approve. Are there any questions or, yes?
Could we ask the commissioner to explain this a little bit, so to some of the people that aren't aware of it?
What this is an ordinance that's been on the books for a while, that 83035, I guess it is on the paper there, that says the county has to have a ordinance to do work for municipalities, and we don't have one. I've been there 28 and a half years, and we've never had one, and I'm not going to throw any other counties under the bus, but we aren't the only one. So it was brought to our attention that we need one. Ran it through Ruth, of course, and she agreed. So we're here asking for it, or we won't be able to contract out anymore.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Tom? All in, what?
Not be able to contract out anymore?
Unless we have this ordinance.
Oh, okay, that's what I've learned.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we have an appointment.
Deer Pleasant and White River Lake Management Districts, Enrique Soria of Coloma, and his appointment will be through April 2014.
Motion by
Adopted.
Eckstein, second by Krantz to approve. Yes.
All the other lake management districts have county board representation on them. Why is this one different?
Is there some other thing we could add?
Can't hear you.
All of the Louis Committee, the Land, Water, and Education Committee members are assigned to a lake management district. And what happened in this case is when Daryl passed away, Enrique took that position. He's the FSA representative on the Louis Committee. We have some non-county board members on our Louis Committee. And he took over and he started going to those meetings, and we didn't realize we needed to formally come back to the county board to have him assigned to that. But it's in the bylaws that it be the Louis Committee members that are assigned to the lake management districts. And we do have one Louis Committee member that is not a county board member. Make sense?
I still don't see why it's different, but
I'll explain it to you later.
the other thing is, when I saw this name, I had no idea who he was. And I think when a committee recommends somebody for an appointment, it would be good to have a short biography with it, and maybe some things about the qualifications and why that person was a good choice for an appointment.
Take that back to your home committees and we'll go from there. That's a good point. All right, are there any other questions? We have motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Do we have any suggestions from the board for future agenda items?
Before I motion to adjourn, I want to thank all of you folks for coming tonight. It's really great to see a full house, and we appreciate your concern for what's happening in the county. And I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Eckstein, second by Weddy, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Okay. I didn't know that meant 5 weeks.
Same conservation committee was over in
God, I didn't have time.
One person from the FSA.
Asking himself, the guy that owns the place,
2-year term,
why is not here?
where we reorganized.
Oh.
With Darrell Lou, our committee at the time.
I'll try something.
They appeal it?
Yep.
He appointed his group.
I think they can.
No, Darrell.
not get a chance.
don't have to do nothing.
We're done.
You lucky
Ones that
bugger.
didn't get
Doug notified downstairs that he was,
She had a lot of papers there that
Daryl's replacement, Daryl's name
should have been here
was
fast.
so he had to do this.
Perfect.
Yeah, but I mean, they had a lot of papers that
But
didn't
it
go
is,
through.
he's not a member of our committee,
this was up.
Daryl's replacement.
Thank you.
I agree with you, I think that
$2.
department in this county is
Yeah, exactly. You don't know with inflation anymore.
part of their job.
Donna, can I get your signature here for Ed Hernandez?
We have to pay him overtime to come to meetings. I think that's part of your job.
I think there's been times when they've delivered them. I think there's been times.
Here I am. I live.
They've had somebody to it.
That big Steve, you have more Steve on some of them.
And I said that's always the preference.
I know Mel tries to distribute them all the time.
We used to get a thing with county employees.
Look at mine. They dumped them together, so many of them like.
But I know she tries to give them
LWP
space
is
when she can.
land conservation and.
Yeah, okay.
I brought that up.
Could I get your signatures on these? Sorry.
Come to a meeting. So you have to pay them, a lot of times you have to pay them overtime because they're not on duty right now. Like somebody in the county clerk's office.
Tomorrow morning.
Or whatever, zoning person, you'd have to pay them overtime to come to this meeting to let us know who they are that are working for the county, which I think is part of the job.
That's ridiculous.
I agree with
It
you.
should be a requirement when they're hired. It should be a requirement when they're hired.
I think there should be part of the requirement that you accept this job, you're going to come to the meeting and let people know who you are. Put a face in front of your name.
I would say.
I mean, there's so many people that work for the county that I have no clue who they are. Not a one. What's that?
Thank you.
I don't know.
Building?
I can't go with that security thing. I go through the county. I don't have to go through barricades and X-rays and all that stuff. I've been at county meetings all over Green Lake County. I don't go through that.
Well, like I said, we'll pack the county and one of them
We
will
don't
come and
need
they both have
we
it.
don't need to come into this committee and have to go
he
through X-rays
just
to check.
had a screen.
Check. Lock the court areas down. Put a barricade across over by the
They're concerned in the courtroom.
You can't run scared to this shit forever. Locking it down, you can only come in that door by Deb's office. Now they're going to put another elevator in or a lift in there. How the hell are they going to do that? I don't know.
Mark,
That's
before you put out, can I get your signature on this document for Ed Hernandez?
This would be right here with the
It's
elevator.
that operational agreement
I don't
document.
believe in locking this building down.
No, I don't either.
If I want to come in and go to a meeting, I got to go through security and X-rays.
For my part, that other north door wouldn't even have to be.
Because the services they got to open.
Just a couple more months.
Yeah, I told them.
I'm gonna resign.
There's a meeting room right there now. We use that meeting room all the
I'm
time.
talking about this other
Having
one.
fun, are you?
None of these doors
Having
are
too
open.
much fun?
That one out there, main entrance door is open during the day.
As much
Why,
as I
you don't need that security. I think it's bullshit. I really do.
Last 2 weeks.
We're the ones that I decide now. We're going to have to come up with $200,000 a year because you're going to have 2 full-time people. And they're not going to be rookies. They're going to bring in lieutenants and sergeants.
There's one in Fox River.
They could be economists. The guy in Green Lake County is a retired guy.
Everybody wants you.
We got other buildings with county offices in too. Don't help them. So what about the building across the street?
You can't run scared. Goes down. I don't care. But you just can't. You give in and do that.
Copy for you and a copy for me.
Money's
Paxton County and Lincoln County both tried it. They was too much of a hassle.
I've been going to Paxton County for meetings. I don't know when they did it, but every time
Otherwise, I
I
got
walk in
some
the
too,
main
extra ones.
meeting room door, there's no security.
But there was 1 year they had it. They had it for about a year.
They didn't change the building, close everything down. I don't care about coming in one entrance. We use the entrance where the elevators are. Whatever you need.
I need a little information, you know.
But if I want to go to a meeting, way over there, or way over here, or up there, I gotta come in by Deb's door, go all the way across the court. That door doesn't even, they should.
I didn't look at all this stuff because we got going to the business.
Hi,
Kimberly Sue.
I just don't like the security committee, many people, of course, it's probably statutory, you have to have this judge and all these people.
Okay.
I don't have an email
I don't think it should have gone through somebody, I don't know what it's
Wow,
I think it should be brought straight to.
Because I've never been up with that into the county, so I didn't know.
They go along with the sheriff runs.
You're welcome.
Now he's $20,000, he wants $20,000 more for extra.
You were gonna give me the old
increase his budget here.
And it could have gone either way, but
I just have to go. Okay.
So I just stand behind there too.
Head to rush in, you know.
I had to stand behind there too.
Well, I understand that. I guess my big concern is, I made the motion to
Nothing
deny
about
it,
all
and
this. Because you've been here before though.
I still think people should be able to do with what they do with what their land it is. I don't know what this guy was thinking about doing this, he should have been somewhere else doing it, but I don't agree with the petitions, because a lot of those petitions had a name on them, and I heard those petitions were sitting in taverns. A petitioner walks out with a piece of paper, you have to know the people that signed the petition.
Until October 14th.
Can't have that stuff. That doesn't work, though. That doesn't work, you have to actually, a petition has to be signed, you take it, you gotta witness that signature. No, whoever puts the petition out has to witness them and sign it, you witness the signatures. Well, that's what they gotta find out with these petitions. If you put a petition out, you gotta know who's signing it, and you have to say, you put that petition out. Yeah, and that's what the people gotta know. Yeah. I still think people should be able to do whatever they want to do with their land if they want to.